Hey there, welcome to another of my reviews of Tai Lopez's 67 Steps. We're up to step number 24. This one's called Gandhi's Funeral, Stephen Covey's War, and Flurries of Activity, the true test of a well-lived life. Wow, so no pressure there. First thing Tai says in this one is how it's normal to have bouts of depression. And that, some of depression is functional. It's a genetic thing to make you aware of comparison failings. Like you're not as good as somebody else, or these kinds of things. I'm not entirely sure I buy that, but he has some research to back it up from some book, so there you go. But moving on to the main part of this, Tai talks about one of the good ways to assess your life is what's called the funeral test. And that's when you die, how many people will go to your funeral? And perhaps not just how many people, but the strength of those connections that you have of people at your funeral, or who will mourn your passing. You look at somebody like Hitler, who, when he died, his passing was not mourned but celebrated once it was discovered, or some of the other horrible people in history, or some very bad people in all walks of life. And then you have on the other side of that, you have people like Gandhi or Mandela, who, of course, when Gandhi died, the entire nation of India mourned his passing. And when Mandela died, thanks to modern technology, the entire world mourned his passing. So, Tai also, I'm going to divert here just for a second. Tai also mentions the death of somebody named Keith Green, who was kind of a minor Christian musician. But Tai doesn't talk about the death of John Lennon. I mean, the death of John Lennon, again, is another thing where the world really mourned his passing, rightly so. But this Keith Green guy, I think this points again to my belief that Tai has a Christian upbringing, a strong Christian fundamentalist upbringing. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So what does this have to do with the rest of it? Stephen Covey's Wars and Flurries of Activity. Well, most of us are taught and rewarded by society for doing just flurries of activity. Passing a test at school, doing an assignment at the office, these kinds of things. And there's a problem with this. One of them is really kind of rewarding people for the hours they put in. And as soon as you start paying people for the hours, they figure out how to stretch the hours, Give somebody 10 things to do in 10 hours and it'll take 10 hours. You give somebody 10 things to do in 2 hours, they can probably get them done in 2 hours. That's the human psyche. It's natural, especially if you're getting paid by the hour. For instance, I'm doing it in my master's. I've got to have 300 hours of time, which is, ridiculous, I think, to have a time limit on it. And most people I know, they just put down the number of hours afterwards because it's not the number of hours. And most people spend way more than 300 hours. It's kind of a weird requirement. It's a middle-of-the-road, rewarding a flurry of activity requirement, because you need to think about the accomplishments, not the hours. You need to, as Stephen Covey says, think with the end in mind. And as Tai is talking about here, Stephen Covey's Wars, you need to think about the war, not the battle, So don't do pointless flurries of activity. So many people, I'm so busy, always busy. They don't accomplish anything, but they're always busy. They're always, running around and doing things, and they have, what do you call it? Whatever. These things that they've got to do. Got to go to the bank, got to go to the post office, got to be on Facebook, got to be on Twitter. All these things that people are so busy doing, yet they don't accomplish. These are the people who are like that are not the people who accomplish things. Trust me. The people who accomplish things do those things and more, because they don't make a production out of it. That's my feeling. But this starting with the end in mind. Warren Buffett says work backwards. Say, what do you want to be at 80? He's over 80, but whatever. What do you want to be at 80? Then, so what do you need? Where do you need to be by 70? Where do you need to be by 60 to get to that place to be 70, to get to that place to be 80? And the interesting thing about this is that I think that by doing that, you actually surpass your goals often. If you're a motivated person, if they're the right goals. And again, Tai quotes Joel Salatin. It says, "Man, this quote hit home for me. It was, the biggest tragedy in life is being good at the wrong thing. So if you don't have that goal set at the end, maybe you're gonna, just be good at the wrong thing. I think simply picking and sticking to the goal helps you get motivated, first of all. If you've chosen the goal right, again, using your Eulerian destiny and these kinds of things like this, and bigger pictures. And, I think it's a real fascinating thing. So picking a goal, or not picking a goal being talked about before, but, so set this goal early, and start to focus as early as possible. You look at Spielberg, started at 7 or 9 years old or whatever it was. Warren Buffett, again, very young. Bill Gates, very young. And if you're not young, like me, start now. Focus now. If you haven't saved money, save now. That's another conversation. But, so do a simple, single goal. If it has to be how people talk about you at your funeral, then fine. How do you want people to talk about you at your funeral? And then break it down into what are your 4 goals for each of these, what are your goals for each of these 4 pillars, which interesting, Tai talks about this idea of maybe it shouldn't be health, wealth, love, and happiness. Maybe it should be health, wealth, love, and fulfillment, because you can't be happy all the time, but you can be fulfilled. So, break it down. And, run all of your choices through this matrix of decisions, not matrix of decisions, matrix of goals. And don't choose to go off course. You're going to get blown off course anyway. So don't choose to go off course. And you can go off course for years. Trust me. I know. I went off course for years, right? Or I don't have a course. Those are my 2 options to think about. But that's another thing. I'm not going to get into that. So try and go as straight as possible. We talked about this again in many of these steps. Go as straight as possible. And not to death, of course, but to the goal that you want before your death. Don't get hooked on low levels of dopamine. Go for the big goals. The big war. Forget about what battles you're going to have to fight along the way. You're always going to fight battles. So that's kind of this one. That's what this is about, think big, aim big, go big. And a lot of people, I think, if they really want it, if they really stick to it, they'll get there. Because they'll educate themselves. They'll do anything. They'll do whatever it takes. They'll be hungry, Hungry for the goal, not hungry as in they can't eat. I made a mistake there. Anyway, I was down to the 4 questions. Who was the epitome of the funeral test? Now, who won that funeral test? Do you have an end game concept, overall, big end game concept? What are your war goals in each of those pillars of health, wealth, love, and fulfillment? And finally, what's your weakest area? Where's the one where you're saying, I'm not even, not working towards my goal at all? And try and do something about it, of course. Anyway, I hope you find these useful. Subscribe. We're up to step 24. We got a long ways to go. But trust me, I'm going to make it through it, and you can make it through it too. So come along with me, and we'll see you soon.